Good day to everyone and welcome to this new edition of XBRL Direction webinars. My name is Catalina Ibanez Gutierrez. I am the chair of the Implementation Awareness Task Force Working Group of XBRL International. I am a consultant at I am an XBRL consultant and XBRL expert at LookAnet. The topic of our webinar from today is a quick start guide for taxonomy development. Today we have with us a very high-level speaker, Björn Fassabend, head of XBRL Collection and Processing Unit from BaFin. This is the German Federal Finance Supervisory Authority. And he is also a member of the XBRL International Board of Directors. Thank you, Björn, for joining us today. We have also today Javier Fernandez Rubio. He is a support consultant by LookAnet Spain. He is a member of the Implementation Awareness Task Force as well, and he's going to moderate the webinar today. So thank you, Javier, also for joining today. So if you have some questions, please use the FAQ option. And at the end of the webinar, we will have time to answer those questions as well. So Björn, the stage is yours.
All right, cool. Thank you, everybody, for joining, and bear with me as I navigate through this here. So yeah, Catalina, thank you for the introduction. I'm going to talk to you guys today about the quick start guide for taxonomy development. But before we do that, first a couple things about myself real quick. So I've been involved with XBRL in a professional capacity for a little more than 10 years and been actively involved with XBRL International for several years now, first starting out as a member of the Best Practices Board, then progressing to chair. And most recently I've joined the Board of Directors as well. But I'm presenting this to you basically as my old role of the Best Practices Board, because in that capacity we actually created this document here. But enough about that. Let's talk about this guide here. So first of all, I'd like to give you a little bit of background information why this guide actually came together, because there's a story to it, and I think it's probably compelling for everybody else too. A couple of years back at BaFin, the German financial regulator, we decided to publish our first taxonomy, which is actually going live, or which went live beginning of this year. And so the team came to me and said, we don't know where to start building this taxonomy. They were fairly new to XBRL development and didn't really know where to begin. And I said, sure, no problem. There's tons of guidance out there. And I provided the guidance information to at XBRL International. And needless to say, was a bit of information overflow, because they quickly came back. It's like, yeah, that's fantastic. There's lots of stuff out there, but it's just too much. We don't know where to start. And so the idea came up that we could create a guide which basically offers a step-by-step guideline on where do I start and what do I do, what comes next, who to involve. And we quickly came to the decision that it's not just necessary to create a taxonomy. I mean, of course, that's the core function, the thing that you're trying to do here, and you have a great artifact then. But a taxonomy is a bit more than just having an artifact. It's more like a living being. It has to be updated. It has to be maintained. And so we wanted to make sure we cover the complete life cycle of a taxonomy, from conception to building all the way up to maintenance and of the thing. And this was fantastic. The Best Practices Board was very open to this idea, and we quickly went ahead and created this quick start guide. And my initial hope was that we would have a very condensed one-pager with, a checklist style where, you start here, you go through here and this and that. And the idea was from the very beginning that we basically just have an overview, and for each relevant section, we would have links to the more detailed documentation that we already have in existence. So you do have a guideline that guides you through from top to bottom, as well as having links to the specific documentation for wherever you need to have more in-depth information on this. And I would like to use this opportunity real briefly also to drum up some support for the working groups and boards at XBRL International. And if you're ever on the fence, or if you're ever considering volunteering and joining them, this is a prime example how you can actually not only help your own team, but also make a difference in the overall community here by creating this by creating this document here, we actually helped to have something that everybody can use, and of course it helped my team in the long run too. And it really makes a big difference. And I think there's tons of great people there. It's a great opportunity to connect with other people. I've had a blast at the Big Best Practices board. The past 5 years have been amazing, and I'm really looking forward to my new role in the board of directors. So yeah, just a little advertisement here. Something great can happen once you get involved and work with the team. But more about the quick start guide. Let's continue. So I already told you the purpose of it was to create a guideline that guides you from conception, creation, and ultimately lifecycle management with quick references to more detailed documentation. So our audience is, of course, taxonomy owners, taxonomy architects, and authors, but it could go much further than that. I mean, of course, anybody who has any remote any involvement with taxonomy development, be it on the business side or project managers, anything like that, they can use this guideline here as a very brief, very compact overview of what is involved, what actually is needed, because it's not as simple as simply throwing together a couple documents and hammering out some taxonomy here. There's a lot more to take into consideration. And I would like to go into that in more detail. Now, for those of you who have seen the quick start guide for taxonomy development, goodness, I can't remember the name already. This is the graphic that's the very top, where we have our little checklist, and we split it up into 5 steps that you actually take. So the first one, of course, would be the taxonomy objective definition. Then later on, you actually figure out who's involved, give you guidelines on which roles you actually have in this whole process. Then, of course, the functional requirements, the technical requirements. And last and definitely not least is the lifecycle management. This is something that's oftentimes overlooked, and I think it's a very, very important aspect to focus on because, like I said, the taxonomy is more or less a living being that needs attention, it needs maintenance, and it's not just something that you throw out there and fire and forget. That's not going to work. So I would like to go through each of one of these sections. So for the next, few minutes, we'll be talking about a little bit over for each of the sections. And at the very end, we'll have a summary on it. And as Catalina already mentioned, you can ask questions at the very end. First of all, taxonomy objective definition. As with any kind of endeavor where you're building something, be it a house, be it a software, be it a taxonomy, for all that matters, you need to know what you're doing. You need to know why you're doing this, what is your goal, what is your scope, and that is, of course, very important here. And because we're looking at this from a regulator's perspective, if you're building a taxonomy, you expect your filers to submit some data for you to analyze. And of course, they want to know why. Why do you want to have that data? So what is so relevant about this data? And so it's important to really know what I'm asking here, what do I need with for and really understand the data points. And this is something that is very important for me, and I would like to stress this, and I'll probably mention this a couple more times. You need to plan for analytical needs. So it's very important to already tailor your taxonomy design around what you want to do when you analyze the data. Because let's be honest with us, I mean, XBRL is a great format, but in essence, it's basically a transport vehicle getting the data from A to B. But the real magic happens once you analyze it. So once the data is in the database, it's available for analysis with a BI tool. That's where the real magic happens. And the way to get it into that database, you can already influence that by the taxonomy design. So if you already factor in how is my data schema set up, how is my, what analytics am I going to do with it, you can already take that into consideration when designing the taxonomy and already making it a lot easier in the long run. So that'll also, be something paying forward for the future, having ability to extend, having ability to change. The more you factor that in the very beginning, the easier it's going to be later on. I've already covered the reasons for reporting. Identify your consumers. Who wants to see the data? Make sure you know exactly who they are, what do they really want to see, and have them really define, okay, I want to have this data point because XYZ, and it needs to be in this format. And of course, you have to consider you're working with an existing environment here. You likely have a portal already that receives the data. You'll likely have a database system already. So you need to factor in how, what infrastructure do I have? How can I integrate into my existing system in order to make sure it works? And of course, like I mentioned again, factor in for future changes, flexibility, growth, any kind of stuff like that. You need to factor in case there's more companies reporting or so on. Factor all that stuff in at the beginning, and it'll be easier in the long run. All right, off to number 2, the overview of roles involved. And this is something that oftentimes surprises people because they see taxonomy development as a very technical, IT-heavy task. And I think it surprises them that 60% of it is actually business related. I mean, that's where the majority of the work is going to happen on the business side. They need to define what happens, what needs to be reported, what needs to be included, how it's supposed to be represented, how it's supposed to be validated. All that stuff is business related. The IT part is only 20% of it. And oftentimes tools will support you already in developing these taxonomies. So there's very little manual input needed. And you basically create the forms, throw it into the tool, out comes the taxonomy. And of course, there's some technical expertise needed. It's not completely gone, but I can't stress this enough. The business side actually has the most of the work. And at least in our case, they were the ones who were the most surprised about this. So I've broken it down into 60% business, 20% experts, and then 20% governance on this. And yeah, it's important, of course, to have internal and external stakeholders that are involved in the process, that actually know what's going on. External stakeholders might be your filers. Inform them as soon as possible that you're building a taxonomy, that they should be prepared, that they will have to, that they get to deal with XBRL, I should say. No, but it is, of course, it's a cost of work for them too, right? I mean, they will have to have some effort to be put in to configure the taxonomy. They might have to get software for it, and so on and so on. So it's important to be open and communicative about this. I'll get into that a little later too, but that's the governance aspect of it. And yeah, of course, like I said, the taxonomy experts will do the modeling, the taxonomy design, and all that good stuff. There's technical work to be done, no doubt about it, but it's far from being the majority of the work. All right, off to the functional requirements. Again, a lot of this stuff is something that business will decide. So there's key decisions to be made. I mean, would you want to reuse existing taxonomies, build upon them, extend them, allow filer extensions, define the structure of the data? How do business want to analyze the data? How do they want to, define the business rules that need to be used to validate these files? And what do the reports how should the reports look like that actually being submitted? All these things are business things, and there's various design choices, open versus closed reporting, the format selections. There's so many different formats of XBRL right now available. Would you choose an iXBRL that combines, basically a PDF view with the XBRL pure quantitative data, or an JSON CSV format or XML? There's a lot of stuff to consider here. And with any kind of software development that you're doing, be it, of course, any kind of regular programming or with taxonomy design, testing is essential. You need to make sure you have various processes going through where you test your choices, where you try it out. Ideally, of course, before you go public with the stuff, you need to make sure, because this is a key. You're giving out an artifact that is being used to report, so you have kind of like an outward reputational, not risk, but it's something to be taken into account, that you want to make sure you provide solid basis for reporting to your filers. So test rigorously in order to make sure that everything goes smoothly. Alrighty, let's move on to technical requirements. So this is, of course, something that will happen likely with a taxonomy specialist that will do this. So how do you want to modularize your taxonomy, right? And would you like to, the versioning approach that already goes into later on the lifecycle management as well. Then label style guidelines. How do you want to style the labels, and so on and so on. It's important decisions to be made, and the sooner you do it before you actually create the taxonomy, the better. There are, of course, technical tasks, creating the dictionary, data modeling, taxonomy building and testing, all that good stuff. And we have guidelines in the Quick Start Guide as well. And something that is oftentimes, well, developers don't like to document, but it's absolutely important. You need to have technical taxonomy files and validation rules and all that good stuff needs to be available to be made public so that your filers have as much information about the taxonomy available as possible. It's going to make it easier for both you as a regulator receiving these files as well as the filers because they will have it easier preparing those files for you. It'll increase, of course, data quality in the long run. It makes everybody's life a little easier by having more information available. So factoring those in at the beginning is already very important. Now, last but not least, and this is very, very important, I cannot stress this enough, is the lifecycle management. This is something to already factor in at the very beginning, already start thinking about it as you're building the taxonomy, because once you're close to publishing it, it gets a little late for that. You need to figure out your release versioning. And what I mean with that is, how many times, for example, there will be errors with taxonomies. It's with any software product too. It's seldom that it's error-free, or it's actually impossible to be error-free depending on complexity. But most likely there will be errors in your taxonomy. So you need to provision how many times do I want to have a hotfix per year? Non-structural changes, right? How many times do I want to do a structural update per year? Because there will be updates as well. Regulations change, the taxonomy needs to reflect that, so there will be an update here. The more you can communicate this already up front to your stakeholders, the better, because they will need to prepare as well. They will need to update their software. They will need to test their software. They need to prepare for the new report creation and all that good stuff. And that's why it's also important to provide enough time for a public working draft for your taxonomy, where you actually publish the taxonomy when it's close to being finalized, giving your stakeholders a chance to give feedback on the taxonomy, concerns, any kind of things that might go wrong from their point of view, and take that into account, factor it in as much as possible, and build the taxonomy and adjust it as accordingly. It'll make your life and those of your filers, of course, a lot easier in the long run. And as I mentioned before, you do need to have update procedures, bug fixing, and communication plans. Like I said, communicate early and as openly as possible about your plans on updating the taxonomy or maintaining the taxonomy. And as I've already mentioned in the previous slide, the supporting materials are very important. The more documentation, the more guidelines you give your filers, the better for them to handle the taxonomy and to prepare their filings for you. This is, it might be a little extra work on your part, but it'll go a long way with your filers because it'll make it easier for them to file for the documentation, for the reporting. Okay, last slide is basically just a few key takeaways where I would like to go over what is really important in the whole thing that I just blew through here. First and foremost, business drives taxonomy development, not technology. All right, so this is the 60%, 20% IT, 60% business, 20% IT that I mentioned earlier. The business side is clearly in the driver's seat here. They are the ones who are making the decisions how the taxonomy, what is to be reported, how it's supposed to be reported, what validations are being done. The technology side, of course, takes care of implementing all these requirements, but it's essential to make sure that to understand business is the key driver here. Again, something I've stressed already earlier, early stakeholder involvement is critical. The sooner you know that you're building a taxonomy, the sooner you have anything to share with your stakeholders, your external stakeholders, most importantly, the better, because that'll give them time to prepare, to get their systems ready, to test their implementations, and it'll just simply make the whole reporting process a lot smoother. And again, this is something with any software system, regular testing and validation is absolutely essential. The more you test, the more you get rid of errors, the less people complain, the smoother the whole process will work. Now, the other parts are, equally important. Design for analytics from the start. Really, really focus from that beginning. Like I said before, XBRL, a great format, it's a transport vehicle. Getting data from A to B, But the real magic really happens with analytics. And as much as you factor that into the beginning already, the better. And again, structure the dimensions for future queries. Already try to anticipate, what do I want to see in the future? The more you already build this into there, the less changes you will have in the long run. And of course, nobody can foresee what is needed. There will be changes and there will be things that will be difficult to implement, absolutely. But the more you already try to think about it at the beginning from the get-go, at least provide opportunities to extend and to implement these things, knowing that there will be these changes coming along the way will make it a lot easier. And the last one might come a little bit of a surprise, assess internal expertise. This is more in the line of make sure, of course, there's great external consultants out there who have great expertise in building taxonomies. But with any external consultant that you hire, they'll be gone eventually. And you'll be left with a taxonomy that you need to maintain, that you need to update and extend. And it's essential to try to have internal capacity for that as well. So have somebody at hand who's internal, who knows how to work the system, who can work with it and update it, and who can manage your taxonomy for you. And the balance of both, I think that's the key here. All right. I think that concludes I know this concludes my little presentation. So Javier, anything question-wise?
Yeah,
Do we have
thank
any
you so much, Bjorn, first of all. I think the presentation was really clear and super helpful. So now we have time for some questions, and anyone attending, feel free to type your questions either in the Q&A box or in the chat. We also prepared some questions in the Implementation Awareness Task Force, so I wanted to start with one of those. One thing we thought about is, you already told us now all of the steps we need to follow for the good taxonomy development, but we wanted to know, according to your experience, which will be the step which is the most important or critical one, or the one you should never miss?
Oh, wow. Well, that's a no-brainer. I mean, the one you should not miss is read this document. Go through this, use it as a guideline, and you'll be happy. Okay, but I'm sure that's not what you were after. So the one that is absolutely essential in my point of view is, really to plan rigorously. Plan at the very beginning, with any kind of development process, the more you put planning at the beginning, before you write a single line of code, before you write anything regarding taxonomy, the happier you'll be. So have enough time, have the right people at hand, and make sure your business stakeholders are aware of their role, about their impact that they will have on their, that they will do 60% of the work, and really have enough time to plan beforehand. And then closely followed by early stakeholder involvement.
Thank you so much. I really, really agree. And also, as you said, reading the guidance is always the most important part, starting well. Now that you mentioned the business specialist, we have another question related to that. So you insisted a lot that business specialists are really relevant in the taxonomy development, sorry. And I wanted to ask you, what will be the issue we will face if we don't involve business specialists enough in the taxonomy, or they are not enough represented?
Yeah, I think it's obvious, because if they're the drivers, they're the ones who actually decide what needs to be reported, and they're the ones who want to have the taxonomy. They are the ones who want to see the data. If you don't get enough input from them, who's IT to decide what to develop? I, as an IT personnel expert here, I wouldn't know exactly what business needs, what they need to see. I wouldn't even know where to start. So I'm absolutely dependent on them. So the IT team is more like the service provider, creating the artifact for them, but business needs to tell them what exactly they want. And if you don't have enough input from there, it's something you absolutely, the worst case scenario was you can't build anything, or it's total crap what you're building there, not sufficient for any kind of purposes. And at best, it's like just a mediocre, not fulfilling the real requirements or missing it. So I think there's a big risk there. It's absolutely essential to have the business personnel available, and that they're aware of their role.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. A different question. We had some public consultations lately regarding some big taxonomies. So I wanted to ask you, how does public consultation benefit the development of a taxonomy?
Because you get real life feedback. I mean, you can test, you can anticipate as much as you want to, but you cannot abstract the real people who are actually going to deal with this taxonomy or work with the taxonomy in the long run. They will be the ones who will be reporting, and they will need to know what they're dealing with. They want to know, of course, understand, okay, this is our new requirement. And their feedback, I think, is invaluable because they will look at it from a totally different perspective than, I, as a regulator, I'll look at it as like, okay, I'm expecting these files back. And they look like, oh, I have to report these. Where am I going to get this data from? So they have a complete different view on this, and they might see issues that I just simply don't see. And I'll need to take that into consideration because otherwise, if I don't get incomplete or inconsistent data, I think that doesn't help anybody.
Yeah, for sure. And similar to this, also wanted to ask you, for the last question, why is clear communication so important when releasing a new taxonomy or new taxonomy versions even?
Why is it important? Yeah, that's absolutely essential because, like I said, I mean, a lot of people are, I mean, of course, we as a regulator, we provide the taxonomy. We have a lot of work going on here. This takes several months to prepare. But once we publish it, our work is not done. I mean, we, of course, expect the filers to send us the files, and those filers, the people who are reporting, they need to integrate that taxonomy into their system. They have work on that part too. They need to factor in, a timeline. By what time do I need to have it ready in order to meet the deadline for submission? They need to have testing done. They need to make sure that it's, contacting their backend systems and getting the data out and stuff. So there's a lot of people past the development stage who actually have their work starts right there when we finish developing, and they need to know what is happening when it's happening. And so that's important to have clear communication and clear expectations, and of course factor that into the whole process. I cannot release a taxonomy at the beginning of the year and expect people to submit filings a month later, giving them too little time to have any chance of preparing anything. So you need to factor in ample time for people to be able to get the stuff into their system, get everything set up. And it's in your own interest again, because I mean, the reason why we're building these taxonomies is to actually get data back that we can use, and to give people a chance to really report the data that we need. We need to give them the time to do that.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much. So I think we are just almost on time. So perfect. We have no more questions. I wanted to thank you again very much, Bjorn, for the presentation and also for your answers. I think now we are all aware of this guidance and the relevance this guidance has. And also thank you so much for all of the people attending the webinar and for joining us today. So we hope we can see you in the next webinar we organize, and have a really nice day.
Yeah, thank you guys very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.